Okay, welcome to Current Exposure. Did everybody miss me? Because I missed all of you. We have a special episode this evening. I know I usually don't come back until around September and we take the summer off, but there's a special election coming up in Newark on July 16th. So we had to do this. It's very important. The election is important. And I want you guys to join me and welcome Brittany Claybrooks, who is running for New Jersey's 10th Congressional District. So that's a seat on the House of Representatives, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone, as usual, get into the comments. Feel free. Don't be shy. Brittany is here to answer questions and, demystify this whole process and how we've come to this and how do we move on. That's it, Brittany. Go ahead. You got it.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You're very welcome.
I was happy to meet you a week ago, and I continue to be grateful for any time I'm allowed the opportunity to speak about, what it is that we're doing, our movement, why we're here, why this election is so important, why business as usual has to go out the window for the state of New Jersey.
Right.
Hopefully starting with District 10 after, our most recent Senate races and a bunch of current events going on with our, government the way that we know it. And I just look forward to a good conversation tonight. And I can't really express enough how grateful I am for this opportunity.
You're welcome. And thank you for being available to the people, to myself, to talk to, and, have those important conversations as opposed to just, these ghost candidates out here where you see their some of their flyers, but you don't see them in the community. So they're ghost candidates to me, and then somehow election day happens, they get in, and you're like, who is that? Who is that? Well, what did that person even do?
Yeah.
So, let me give Will, shout out to Will. Thank you for joining us. Will was on the show a couple of weeks ago. I think a month ago, too. Yeah. But before we get into conversation, and I'm gonna let people come into the show, into the chat, let them see what's going on because they seem a little shy right now. So I'll play your ad that you put out. And then if anyone has questions, we'll take it from there.
I appreciate that.
All right, let's see. I'm going to go straight to your page. I think we're on your page. Are we on your page? Yep, we're on your page.
My website.
Yep, we're on your website. We're going to play it straight from your website. And anyone who's watching, feel free to go to the website. It's let's see, let's get the website up here. It's in the ticker Claybrooks for Congress.com. And once you see this page, you know you're there. But let's hold on, wait, before we go on. I can't miss this comment. Jeffrey Dye says good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dye. Appreciate it.
All right, here we go here. Let's see.
The American dream was a promise that hard work leads to a good life. But that promise has been broken.
Rising housing costs.
Rent has increased by more than 30%.
Cost of living is forcing some older Americans back into the workforce.
Nationally, seniors are now the fastest growing age group experiencing homelessness.
Are unpaid caregivers, and many of them are raising young kids and taking care of a parent at the same time.
The cost of childcare in the U.S. continues to rise.
I intend to do something about it. My name is Brittany Claybrooks, and I'm running to be your Congresswoman for New Jersey's 10th District in the upcoming special election on July 16th. I dedicated my career to healthcare, urban planning and community development, and affordable housing. So help me. Amen. When I became a councilwoman in East Orange, I was determined to fight for the community that embraced me.
New Jersey today becoming the 6th state to close all non-essential businesses.
The pandemic exposed the deep cracks in our society. I helped implement emergency business relief and rental assistance programs to keep my neighbors whole. Then I faced a challenge of my own. Losing my birth mother and my adopted mother in the same year, I took a break for healing, surrounding myself with friends and family. But I returned to this work in the most recent Senate primary, inspired by the continued fight for a New Jersey controlled by the people, not party politics and personal interests. It's time to end the cycle of broken promises. As your Congresswoman, I will never turn my back on the hardworking families of this district. No one gets left behind.
I'm just so proud. Yeah, hold on one second. I can't hear you. You're on mute, Sakima.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We also have our co-host who just joined us. Don't be shy. Don't worry. He's a friendly Republican.
Oh, okay. Well, thank God I have some experience with folks like Rick Scott and others. So I'm ready for you.
Oh, let's go. Oh, is it going to be a showdown, Mr. Ruffin?
I am ready for you.
Let's go. Oh, she is ready for you, Mr. Ruffin.
Yeah. But I also have a good friend in Bridgewater by the name of Matthew Minch, and I think he's pretty dope. So.
I couldn't see you for a minute.
Oh, you couldn't see us? All right, what about now?
I can see you now.
Did you hear us?
Yeah, I heard you guys. Well, I didn't hear you. I heard Miss Claybrooks.
Oh, okay. All right. So look, we're gonna get into our normal casual conversation. I'm jumping into the comments. You could come with your Republican swag and because she's ready for you. You know how we do.
I know.
May the best party win. All right. Was right is right. It was wrong is wrong.
But even though I'm on the Republican side, I'm not voting for the Republican candidate. I'm actually voting for her. I just have Republican questions though. So,
that's really sweet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you gonna talk about your guns? He got guns.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about all of the some of the Republican issues and also some of the Democratic issues that I also see in my city.
Okay, awesome.
So, yeah.
Good.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm just joking though. I have guns too though, and I'm a Democrat.
Okay.
But I have my reasons. But I do believe there should be some measures.
Yeah, we both can agree on that.
So Will says, Ms. Claybrooks, what are your plans for the District 10 regarding New Jersey Transit? There are 3 stations that are from East Orange to Orange. What are you going to do to address the recent fare increase in the station conditions? I know some of the stations aren't well lit at night.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I actually am happy about that question because we talked about it at my meet and greet yesterday. I am an urban planner by trade, and so transportation, infrastructure, housing, building cities are all things that are within my what they like to call wheelhouse. So I'm happy with this question. I was not, elated to see, our opponent in the Senate race talk about her, like the fact that she was okay with the raising of fare, costs. And my biggest issue with it is, are we sure that raising the cost of the fare was the best way to get down to what we say we need, right? I think there have been a lot of conversation about, why are our train stations increasingly not being paid attention to in the way that other train stations are, particularly in East Orange, where 2 of them are in my ward. So You know,
Right.
as a councilwoman, and I remember that fight, and we were happy to see, a few $1 million being invested in with respect to the work that Mr. Payne has done, and they just celebrated the work that he did and getting us money for our train station. But outside of that, there's so many other things that we can be talking about with respect to transit. If I'm going to pay more money, it means that I need to be able to travel inside of New Jersey easier, right? So
Right.
you're raising costs for us to have to travel to one place or make it easier for us to travel by train to a New York. Well, how hard is it for me to get somewhere else in the state of New Jersey on this very same train where you are charging me extra to ride? And if we also know that maybe in some areas the bus may come every 5 minutes in an urban part, but for folks that are living in other parts of this district, they may not see a bus that frequent, you know.
Right.
And also the cities are not walkable. And we're having conversations about infrastructure, about should we add more lanes? No, we should make room for infrastructure that welcomes other modes of transportation, people who ride by bike. We
Right.
obviously are building apartment buildings without enough parking. So how are you accommodating people who are looking to get rid of their cars, which speaks to an environmental issue? How are you creating safe, walkable environments for people who only take the train or only take the bus? How are you creating more infrastructure on your streets to catch or protect people who ride a bus, like bus shades and things like that? What is this money going to go into? And I think the problem that people have is our life is becoming increasingly expensive, even in the area of public transit, and yet we aren't seeing real improvements. And or we're paying exorbitant amounts in Easy Pass, but the same
Right.
hotels that were there when I drove over, when I took the Parkway the last time are still there and blowing our tires off. Especially if you're in Irvington trying to get on the Parkway, like
Oh yeah.
to that entrance. So, I think that the conversation is not about like why you're raising the prices, which is a problem. It's what are you doing?
With the revenue, right?
Who worked there?
Right.
What are they doing? And why are our state senator, before she was a state senator, had to argue with them about it, fight for New Jersey Transit to pay attention to East Orange. We're seeing that and constantly cities are building and making their cities more desirable, if you will. But our money isn't following. And I think that the federal conversation around infrastructure has to be about like how do we earmark funds that make sense? And when do we know how to hold each other accountable for just doing something different? It's not always raise the taxes. It's not always raise the fee so that we can pay for it.
Okay.
How have you been managing the money? How have you managed the money before? A lot of
Exactly.
those are the questions we got to start asking our government. What were you doing?
Now, what about that New Jersey Transportation Authority is here in Newark on Raymond Boulevard? It's walking distance from Newark Penn Station.
If it's
Have
on
you?
Raymond Boulevard, I'm sorry. If it's on Raymond Boulevard, I actually went over several potholes over there myself.
Right.
So, yeah. So that speaks to the type of dysfunction that I think we got to deal with, though, and that she may have to deal with when she becomes the congresswoman.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I think so. Even if you're talking about the light rail, right? Something like a light rail, which is an alternative mode of transportation as well. Even if it exists, does it extend far enough? And is the line allowing for people to ride it from further distances? And when do we start talking about Newark being a destination? And when do we start talking about intra New Jersey travel? Like,
yeah.
why
Right.
is this so hard? I participated in, and we bless God for the bike that I won in a raffle. But there's this day in October called No Car Day, where you have to
Okay.
another way to, you work with Easy Ride in New Jersey, and you have to figure out another way to work, carpool, like alternative ways, and it's an environmental, justice sort of thing, and it forces people to explore other ways of transportation.
Wow.
The train from East Orange to Plainfield, and it is on average maybe between 36 and 42 minutes, depending on the morning. And
Okay.
it took me an hour and 42 minutes to get from East Orange to Plainfield.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, that's
but I could get to New York in 25 minutes.
yeah.
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 We have to open up this conversation. Is our infrastructure, our transportation infrastructure built well enough for us to be able to accommodate all our lives? Because we know after COVID is not only are more people moving here, people want to stay local more often.
Right.
People want to do things in and around their neighborhoods more often. And when people move to a place, they want to eat there, work there, play there, do all the things there. And even if they work in New York, that may not mean that they want to spend their leisure time in New York. So just be able to
Exactly.
move in and around New Jersey better. I should not be able to get to Pennsylvania by like Philly or New York better than I can get around my own place of living.
Right.
There's a lot more, thought around that. And I think it's 2024 now. I'm not certain the exact years that we began to build this out, but it's time for us to have different conversations. Certainly, if we're going to be paying more money and putting the burden on people who usually take public transportation, who are often our most needy folks and are people who are working the hardest to survive every day. And most of the people who make these decisions probably don't even know what it's like to take the train or how much
they're not connected.
Yeah, or how much it might impact your budget, like it was for me in grad school, where I had to decide, do I want to spend $56 and get a weekly pass and then use the rest on groceries, for the week, or do I go ahead and buy a monthly pass and just make sure I'm at school more often so I feel like it's more worth it for me to off this pass? Like, people aren't thinking about what people's everyday budgets are, because most of the time they don't have to deal with that kind of issue.
Right. And we recently had a relative who was traveling by e-scooter at night, and he was going from Newark to Elizabeth, and he ended up getting hit by a car. And now he's doing better, but he's in a hospital and he's like pretty broken up. And yeah, there's no transportation. So he rides his bike or his scooter.
Yeah. And there aren't enough grants in the world for, because the state does give grants. I know that there may be some federal ones. I got to look into it because I'm not here to misrepresent what I know and don't. But governmental grants aren't enough. Cities have to begin to invest in this and make it a priority. And so if cities are going to make it a priority, then that means the state and the federal government also have to make it easier. And it should be easier given that New Jersey is designated almost on the whole as an urban place because of the density here across the state. So the federal government should have an easier time having this conversation. We should have a better time having this conversation in a place like New Jersey. The problem is that we have to continue to have it in a way that makes sense for us, because what's going on in Michigan and other places may not be the same, because a suburb in New Jersey might be the densest. Again, we're the densest state in the union, so we have to have different conversations that fit us. But respectfully, you have to elect people who know how to have those conversations.
Exactly. So, and that brings us to the comment where Nadira Brown says, "Thank you for sharing and caring for the community. Continue the great work. Love the video. It shows true accomplishments in the community, not vague accomplishments." And then Will said something about when a passenger is on New Jersey Transit and they forget to purchase a ticket, they charge you $5 extra towards the expense of the ticket. So I'm assuming he wants you to address that if you're our next Congresswoman. No extra fees.
Say it one more time.
Okay, Will says if you forget to purchase a ticket and you have to buy it on the train, they charge you $5 extra on top of what the fare is.
Yes.
So I'm assuming he wants to.
I always hated that. I always hated it. I think it's the convenience fee that they charge.
Okay.
I've been there where I've been running late and I'm tripping up the stairs at Brick Church trying to.
With the heels on?
No, like I when I was a grad student, I took the train a lot. I went to NYU.
Oh, okay. I'm like tripping up the stairs with the heels. Are you running in the hills? Okay, let me find out. That's that AKA spirit.
there were times where I've had to do that. But running up the stairs and forgetting to, buy my ticket, oftentimes they would say, like, you can buy it on your phone and you don't have to worry about it. And I would ask them to come back if you got a good, train administrator,
conductor.
Conductor, yeah. If you had a good one, they would allow you and if they were familiar with you. But I couldn't imagine what it might be like for someone who had a flip phone or a phone that was not compatible for purchasing things on the app, or who did not have debit cards, right? Or people who don't have other ways to pay. I certainly think it's something to look into. I'm not here to, gut people of all the fees that they charge.
Right.
But certainly, I hope that we can begin to look at what we can start to make easier for people if we're going to raise the fare overall. Right. I definitely think that's something that should be considered.
Okay. And we have this hot topic. This has been a hot topic for I think the last two administrations, affordable housing. Everyone focuses on saying affordable housing is available, but there needs to be some evaluation on this. Affordable is really not affordable, and many individuals are facing challenges to be able to rent in the community. Would this be something that can be addressed on the Congress level? Many have brought this up to Newark local council and were told that was something they couldn't address. And that comment is from Nadira Brown.
Well, first of all, I don't know that any public official should be telling you that there's something that they cannot address.
Right.
Because oftentimes, and I've always said this, when I was a councilwoman in Orange, I don't vote on things that I cannot explain to the public.
Wow.
So I don't think that, being a leader is a privilege. Being an elected leader is a privilege. And it's one that, comes with a lot of responsibility, and to whom much is given, much is required, meaning that it is required for you to have the answers. You are not a normal person. You don't have the benefit of saying, I don't know. You may say, I don't know right now, I'll get back to you. But I don't know is not an answer for you permanently, particularly when those decisions come from you. Right. So let me start there. Second thing is, affordable housing is on everyone's platform. I don't know if folks watched or attended the candidate forum, but I think we have to begin to have a conversation about housing from a multi-tiered perspective. I focused on housing and economic development in my grad school program, and I've worked in it all this time since. And there's a difference between, I've always tried to say, if you can change people's built environment and improve their built environment, meaning their homes and things around them, you can change their trajectory in their lives. And most of the time, where people live and how people live can tell you a lot about where they're going in their life.
Okay.
Now, you have some anomalies like me, but the statistics prove that when people have good, safe, quality spaces to live in, then they are oftentimes better off. That being said, there needs to be a conversation, especially at the federal level, about a couple things. One, federally funded public housing and the conditions in which they are kept.
Okay.
I always said in East Orange that most of the time, because you have to start to provide low-income publicly funded housing if we're going to house everyone, because not everybody has the same ability to pay. And so if you take somewhere like Bradley Court, where I spent some time, last week, and quite frankly, I don't know that people spend a lot of time there, nor do they prioritize it. That's a publicly funded place to live.
Okay.
Talk to folks about what they really think. They'll tell you that the new buildings are not what they're necessarily worried about, even in people who live in other types of buildings with private landlords but are just older. Their problem is not necessarily the fact that there are new buildings coming. Their problem is the conditions in which the place they're living in are
maintenance,
which they're in. So it's a big problem. It's why is it that we have not seen improvements to our floors? I'll talk about, first of all, the law requires that you really make improvements every so often. Maybe it's every 5 years, depending on where you live or whatever. You can tell that some of these places have not seen improvements or even a straight cleanup crew.
Now,
and in East Orange, there are plenty of beautiful buildings, but code enforcement, has to be responsible for finding these landlords or for making sure that they're enforcing the code. Everyone knows that they can't afford to live in a new building, a new development, because one, you cannot concentrate poverty. I will never be for keeping developments out of cities, because anytime you concentrate poverty is where you create a depressed situation for everybody living there, even people who own homes. So that's a problem.
yes.
I need to
Yes.
change that mindset. But if I live in a building that it was previously existing, especially in a place like New Jersey where it's as old as it is,
Right.
I don't want to live with bed bugs and roaches either. And I don't want my ceiling leaking either. And I don't want, a dirty hallway either. And I don't want, because here's the problem. You're getting the rent for somebody, even if it ain't all out of my paycheck, you're getting it for the other part from the federal government.
So how could something like that happen where you have a building just go without mandatory scheduled maintenance for so long, to the point where, I don't know if you've heard about Georgia King Village, or if you've been there, or even have you heard about is that Carmel Towers, Zaire, on Elizabeth Avenue, that was cleared out? It was like basically destroyed because there were bed bugs, roaches, mice, everything in there. How does a building get to that point? And I've been to East Orange, to a lot of those buildings that are just as old and even older than the buildings in Newark, and I'm like, they're immaculate.
Some of them. We got our problems.
Oh, the ones I've been in, they've been immaculate. Yeah. And I'm like, the architecture is, maintained, kept intact, and they're beautiful buildings. Like, somebody was taking care of them. But
I think I hear you.
How does something like that happen to the point where it's probably been happening for like 10, 15, 20 years? And now here we are, we have somebody like you, this falls into your lap, and it's not going to be something that would be reparable or able to be repaired in like 2 months. Like, how do we get to that? How have we gotten to that point where nobody has said nothing or held anyone accountable?
I think that there's a couple things, because I also wanted to go into, the idea of home ownership and all the different housing tiers. But before we do that, I think the way it gets there is just neglect. Like, let's just call it what it is: pure neglect on the part of, whether it's local, state, or federal government. I've had conversations with folks at HUD about how do we begin to incentivize people to build, and how do we provide, funding for people to be able to provide those lower income, units, and because the federal government has to step in. But it's the same thing with federally funded housing, state funded housing, or housing that is, being built by housing authorities. It's pure neglect. And I think there's this idea of poor people, right?
Right.
Deserving what they get, like deserving the conditions that they live in. And we have to change our mindset about that, because if we're going to be honest about systematically who is perpetually poor,
right,
then are we saying that Black and brown people are undeserving of good quality of life? Because systematically we're the ones who end up being perpetually poor in this country. And so are you saying that this is how these people are supposed to live? I mean, I know that growing up, I thought that that's just the way it was. We live this way, and when you cross the line to go to the mall and get your Easter outfits and stuff like that, this is just the way they live. And that's not true. As I began to get older, I realized that's just not how it's supposed to be. I'm not supposed to see more killings in my community because of what I look like, or my community is not supposed to look like this. But systematically, we're concentrating poverty and making it look a certain way. You know what I mean? I'll give you an example. East Orange, people talk about what East Orange was and what Newark was prior to, the riots and all of those things. And now you have this city where, you're welcoming people to live in public housing, publicly funded housing, or taking voucher. And then that's what we think it's supposed to be. That's not That's not true. And the government's job is to make people's lives better, regardless of who they are.
Okay.
I fundamentally believe that. I mean, it could come from me being on assistance most of my life until I quote unquote made it, above a certain, pay grade or whatever. But I just fundamentally believe that our government's job is to make people's lives better. And for the people who have to depend on it, they deserve a place to stay that's clean.
Right. Now, what about personal responsibility, though?
Mm-hmm. So let me say this to you.
Because I've grown up in a similar upbringing, the projects, State Street projects, and then I don't know if you heard about the number blocks, but that's supposed to be the hood, the ghetto, or whatever. And that's where my father grew up at. So my mother was from the projects, got with my father. So, and I'm like, I didn't know there was, any real stigma, because everybody seemed happy and well off until the crack epidemic hit Newark really, really bad. And
the government's fault.
Yeah, so it got really bad, but some of us got out of those places. And we're thriving. So I'm like, I really don't understand. I really don't get it why some people, where we all grew up in the same conditions, same city, why do we have to deal with the impoverished conditions and features and the trash, the killing each other, and it makes it look like that's what we all do when that's not the case. But why can't we solve that problem on our own in our own cities?
We can't. I don't think it's something and that's something that I don't take on. Like when somebody asks me about what it means to be Black and what it means for some of us to make it and others of us not making it, systematically it is, I mean, I hate to sound like that person, but systematically it's set up that way. And until we can begin to address our internal biases that we have towards people who look like us, I encourage you to read the book Disintegration. It's when I started to understand
Disintegration. Who is that by?
I think his name is Eugene. I got to find his name, but I read it in grad school, and when I began to develop that kind of frustration, it taught me that I was internalizing the proximity that I wanted to power, and it's something that naturally happens to you as you elevate, and so you naturally want that for other people, and it turns into frustration. And I think when you start to address the systematic issues that causes some of us to make it and others of us not to make it, and you see statistically that even those of us that are making it, we still are more subject or more subject to poverty than other races, then you'll find a lot more grace as you do this work. And I think that, I mean, because it's a real thing. Like, why aren't you? But to be honest with you, if you come to neighborhoods, particularly like where I grew up and you grew up, people are keeping their individual spaces right. But if if I walk up in Bradley Court and I'll give you an example. I went into one of the buildings, right? And I'm at the top floor, and you can see people have done the best they could with the spaces they're in. They put stuff on the wall, and they open their door for you, and there are candles, and their unit looks nice. But what are they supposed to do about the fact that the maintenance team has not come clean up the hallway?
Exactly.
What are they supposed to do? How am I supposed to act if the police are here every day? Like, what y'all doing here? If I'm still experiencing
Right.
Yeah, but then that's when you get people
cars over there. It's literally this is what my question was. There are 6 cars here.
Right.
2 of y'all in the car at minimum per car.
I'm glad you saw that.
Per car. So how come?
Tax dollars being spent on that.
But that's what you're supposed to have tax dollars spent on. But if I'm gonna live in a space, because guess what? I lived in a building that had Section 8, and I was on scholarship housing, meaning that I was using my school loans to pay for that housing. And you walked up in our hallway, somebody might have did something in the hallway, but there was somebody that came to clean it up and somebody took care of it. Shout out to Lafayette Properties, who continues to say, that's why the waiting list so long, because I don't care what you live like or who you are or whether you're on a voucher or paying for rent. We take care of our properties because they are our properties, and that's our company's motto. That don't have nothing to do with nobody being on Section 8.
Right.
That had nothing to do with that. So you have to address the entities, and you have to address systematic concerns. And that's why I feel like if you aren't dedicated to addressing systematic concerns for real, government and public service is not where you should be. There are plenty of things to do to make money. There are plenty of things to do to serve your personal interests, where you go to work, you get a compensation, and you go home, you lay down, you live your life. Government and public work is not that. And there are too many people who live as if they are doing you a favor by working in a government entity, or they're doing you a favor by picking up the phone when you call. I have concerns, and we ought to be creating housing for everybody. There's housing for the homeless, whether it's shelters and the mini houses, and all these different states have their stuff. There's rental, there's renters at market rate. There are people who have Section 8 vouchers that may one day be able to turn into a down payment on a house or in a rent to own program. There's transitional housing. There are people who own homes who are still in need of the public government stepping in, right? Because cap placed on how much you can receive in your tax deductions at tax time, based on something placed there by the federal government, and you need it to be expanded because you live in New Jersey paying $15,000 and $20,000 a year in taxes, right? That's a federal, that's as much of a governmental issue as somebody on Section 8 waiting in the line to have somebody answer the door for their application. Those are the two different issues, both governmentally regulated. So how are you different?
Right.
Your ability, your lifestyle is just different. The way you experience housing is different, but the government's job is to continue to make your life better regardless of your ability to pay. And we just have to do better by our residents, particularly those who are Black, brown, and live in urban cities, especially now that they're becoming cute little places to stay for the folks who don't look like us.
Wow.
Respectfully, because the culture that exists in these places come from our struggle. Hip hop we created out of our struggle. Graffiti and wall murals came from our struggle and needing to express ourselves artistically. And now it's art because it's on the side of a coffee shop. I need what's owed to me on that too. I need to be able to sit outside in that sun and drink that coffee as well, because I've been here.
I agree.
Okay, you better preach.
I like her.
You know, stop playing with us. You know.
Will says, what is your stand on supporting urban towns to help them to get more funding, Newark, Orange, East Orange, for their urban enterprise zone programs and more jobs for residents in these towns?
Okay, so thank you for the question. Having worked on a UEZ program in Plainfield when I was the economic development manager and had to manage the sign and facade programs, having to help East Orange build out what their next phase would be when they were thinking about how to re-roll out the program or what they were going to do with the allocation and the money, is something that I'm dedicated to. I think that federally, again, I'm running for Congress. Federally, we have to begin to look at how federal contracts are laid out and continue to protect offices like the SBA. President Biden has done a really good job of creating more and increased budget line items for things like the Small Business Administration, the Minority Business, Center and Office, and the Department of Treasury. He's done a very good job of, making sure that he's putting his money where his mouth is, and that's what his job is to do as the administrative, leader. Here are the things that I think we need to invest more in: businesses, for minority folks, contracts for people. Shout out to Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who has been doing that work, trying to get federal governments to release the amount of, contracts they're doing with Black folks and just act them by race, meaning separate them by race so we can see how well or not well departments are doing by investing in Black communities or in Black businesses and Black people. And then if I'm the Congresswoman, one of my major things that I want to do that I'm most excited about is creating an office or a space within our office, in each district office, as well as our federal office, handles grants, that handles, outreach, that handles our town halls where we'll do biannual town halls in each part of the district and announce them so people can come understand what's happening. Because most of the time, having worked in Congress before on the House floor as a Congressional Black Caucus intern/fellow, oftentimes I noticed that people didn't think the Capitol was something for them. They know that their city council, their city hall is for them. They even make state houses for them, but rarely did you see people on the House floor watching those kinds of their congressperson talk about these things. Rarely do we feel like the congressional spot is something for us. And so much of it is because politicians and public service have become celebrities and so untouchable. And that's one of the things that I admired about Congressman Payne, was that he was not that way. I've worked with him in some of the most exclusive professional spaces, particularly the House floor. And he's the same way on and off the floor. And I think one of the things that I like to add to that legacy is creating an office with a qualified person, not my friends. Let me be clear. I don't work with my friends. My friends do not have jobs in any of my offices. Nor am I friends with people who don't do their job. So if we do become friends over time, it's because you do your job and we're bonding over our high levels of professionalism. So I'm not one of those.
Wow.
So
professionalism, high level of intellectualism.
So let's be very clear. The person who will run this department is highly qualified to do so. And it will be someone who's dedicated to helping people understand grants and pitfalls. And I think that ought to inform us on how some of these applications roll out, because I remember working and creating the Emergency Business Assistance Program when I was over the Planning and Grants Committee in East Orange. And I remember when the administration brought the application to me after I created it in Plainfield and was helping them get theirs together. I remember, creating it out of scratch during COVID. Let's be real. So I remember them giving me the application and getting ready to have me approve it. And it said something like, they were asking the business, do you currently have violations with the city? And I was like, why is that relevant?
Right.
Like, how many applications are people filling out, particularly at the state level when we saw that disparity study? How hard and strenuous are these applications for some people to even have access to if you can't check something properly? When what we learned during COVID is make it available, make it as easy as possible for people to obtain, and the rest will work itself out. So the first thing I want to do is work on how governmental applications are, right? We've seen when you expand the definition of childhood poverty, increasing families' ability to have federal assistance, as we know that our money isn't stretching as far enough, like it used to. If I'm on $70,000 now, it's not the same as $70,000 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 11 years ago. So my household may be struggling now on $70,000. So I should be able to have an application. I should be able to do those kinds of things. It's the same with urban enterprise zones. It's the same with, towns who are receiving grants from the president, like Newark, right? How easily accessible are we going to make that, and how transparent are we going to be about how that money is used? And what we have to start to ask ourselves, what is the federal government's role in monitoring some of those grants and those programs? I remember having to work with the Brownfields Development Program, and the federal president assigned to me. I'm not really finding out what's going on until we're about to go into default.
Wow.
Now I have to do the work in a weekend to reclaim the $2 million that was allocated to us, in my job.
Oh my gosh.
In East Orange, hiring a contracted, company for $45,000 to do the work in 1 month that we've neglected to do for 2 years just to keep funding. And the only people who are hurting from that kind of carrying on
the
are
people.
the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if you ever hear anything about Brittany Claybrooks, know that it is because I wasn't playing the radio. I didn't care who you was related to. I'm sorry, but you are paid to do a job. And if we also have to do audits on our capacity as governments, if we know that we have 2 people in a department where it should be 5.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or if we know that, you know, our good sister or our friend or our cousin and our auntie and them not doing a good job in a certain department, and it
They
happens.
have to go. They have to go.
It happens at all levels of government. We have to start to have conversations about that, because whether it's federal, state, or local, human capital is the most important part of government work.
Yeah.
And so we have
Yeah.
to evaluate our human capital. We have to pay people well, pay people who deserve it, and then also make sure that people who are managing the grants are responsible for making sure they spread far enough, because they'll get comfortable in giving it to the same people over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's not
Wow.
just a local thing, it's a federal thing too, it's a state thing too. I work for the state of Florida. I had to do the same thing at the Department of Juvenile Justice. Okay, we're gonna have to reevaluate you. You had this grant for 5 years. What are the metrics showing? And how have you improved?
So you're looking at the data.
Correct.
Not just, oh, I like this person. This is such and such relative. And that brings us to Chris Seals' question. He says, good afternoon. In this day and age, I have to ask, if elected, will you pledge not to hire any relatives like others have done? And you must be psychic. Right. No, hold on. She must be psychic, because that's where people have concerns, and she's connected and engaged already to the point where she's already addressing people's questions before even knowing.
Yeah,
prior to.
It's a real question to ask, right? Like, having been the person who had to,
and people are tired of it,
call for an investigation on how we were using our COVID funds.
Yeah.
You know, having been the councilwoman, have to send an email and be like, excuse me, you know.
Put that in writing. Yeah, document that. We need a paper trail now, because I know they're not about to throw you under the bus.
Correct. As the chair of the Planning and Grants Committee, you know, I'd like us to have a conversation about these COVID dollars.
Right.
You know,
right.
I haven't seen a cleaner here yet, and this seems to be the address for the cleaning company. So,
right.
Going on. I mean, needless to say, I think I almost couldn't breathe when I walked in City Hall the next time, because I'm sure they didn't want me to come back in there and have that be an issue. But you have to start asking the questions, because if your heart is with the people, then everything you do is going to be in their best interest. Because when I'm on my personal time, I'm on my personal time. But when I come to work, which I very clearly made a very clear decision, I'm not going to school to be a doctor. I'm going to work in government. I'm going to be a public servant. That was a decision that I made, not out of convenience, not out of survival, but it was a decision. And so when you make that kind of decision, you have to understand every day what your role is. And for people who are managing those folks, you have a responsibility to make sure you're delivering. Like, you also have a responsibility, because we're in New Jersey. If we were some other state, we'd be talking about a different thing. But New Jersey is infamous for cronyism. And for,
somebody said that too much nepotism and cronyism going on.
It is infamous in New Jersey, and so I have to address it because it's relevant to where we live. I don't think that your friends or your relatives being hired is a problem, because most of the time, governments everywhere are the biggest hirers. They're the biggest local hirers, right? If somebody works and they live around the corner, it's a good thing. It's a community thing,
right? But it got out of control.
No, here's the problem. The problem is, can your relative and your friend do the job?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't care about relatives.
Listen, I've become very close friends with people that I've worked with over the time here. But I guarantee you, pull those people track records, those ain't the people who. And if they have been written up or retaliated against or something, it's because they were doing the opposite, which is holding people accountable, which is like, it's like bug spray to some people in the government. It's like accountability is like bug spray. It sends people everywhere and out of every which direction.
And we need the spray. I want to empty the whole can out on them.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
I have a couple questions on my own for Brittany. My first question is, dealing with the governmental accountability. What does that mean to you as a candidate, though? What does that mean to you for not just from your previous position, but what would you think for the future? How would that look in the near future?
It looks like, so number one, it just looks like doing the best you can to earmark funds for your district, right? Depending on
Ooh.
what it is. So that's the first part of governmental accountability. That's my first job, because Congress has to do three jobs: legislate, appropriate funding, and investigate should there be some type of, wrongdoing or impropriety on behalf of the administration. So those are our three jobs. All the rest of the stuff, coming to the chicken dinners and the churches and all that stuff, we like to do that too, but those
Okay.
are our goal. Those are our top three things, right? And
All
so
right.
what it looks like is having conversations with federal agencies about, if it's HUD, how are you managing these grants? And how much more money are you going to invest in the home fund program? Or how much money do you need to invest? Because there are Congress people who have called for them to increase the investment in those programs, because they provide gap funding for housing authorities to provide, either low income housing or
Mm-hmm.
provide more, funding to developers who are trying to develop affordable home ownership opportunities. So if we haven't seen an investment in that kind of program since 2011, that's holding them accountable, signing on to letters. If you know that the Green New Deal is something that can really address the idea of, employment and the environment and how buildings are being kept that are federally funded, you should be
Okay.
signing on to those things. If it's addressing, the transportation department about its investments in some areas over others, or how their contracting systems are not hiring Black businesses to take care of certain train stations, or hiring Black businesses to provide certain services. Those are
Right.
those are things that you can do to hold governments accountable. I think
Wow.
you just have to know how and have the experience. And I think in this race,
Mhm.
we have not had enough conversation about what the experience looks like. You can have positional power, but then there's
Right.
also something called innate power. And you have to be
Mm.
to have the innate power, which means that's what makes you stay up all night and
Passion.
pour over these contracts. It's what makes you go the extra step and become a government contracting professional like I have in the state of Florida. It's what makes you go back to school and really try to figure these issues out. It's what makes you not get mad at residents when they are asking you
Right.
questions, because you know that you are doing what's in their best interest. It's what makes you take vision cards around and say, hey, here's what I know how to do, but I want to know what you want me to do. That is what governmental accountability looks like. And I think all too often in our communities, particularly Black communities, we are not, we fall so much in love with who these people are when they show up,
Mm-hmm.
that we
Yeah.
forget that they have a responsibility to us and they are not doing us a favor.
Right.
You
I
are not
agree.
doing me a favor by being elected. If you don't want to be elected, go do something else.
Right. And like you said, it's an honor to be in that position.
Yeah,
I got some questions for you.
I see.
Will says, regarding the presidential election, Biden and Trump, do you think there should be an age limit for president, or term limits? Well, there's already a term limit. It's only 2 terms, right?
Yeah,
Do you
there's
think
already
there should be an age limit, or like, go ahead, I'll let you answer that question, because I kind of have that question too, but it's in a different way.
I don't know if there should be an age. There's already term limits.
There's an age minimum.
Yeah, I think there's an age minimum.
Yeah, I think you have to be. I think Zaire knows that. Zaire, how old do you have to be? The age minimum for
35 to
president.
be president.
Yeah, you have to
Okay.
be 35 to be
35
president.
to be president. Sorry, I had a connection issue, Ms. Claybrooks. I apologize for that.
It's okay. I don't know how I feel about the age piece of it. I think
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about the age piece of it. I mean, in some professions like firefighters and police officers, you can't be over a certain age to do certain things.
Right.
That's not my area of expertise, but do I believe you should have, as long as you have the ability to still lead, you should be. I think in the case of Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden, I wish we stopped having this conversation about who's better fit to lead of the two of them, because I think we know the answer to that. And
Right.
he's also well equipped with a woman, a Black woman who represents the part of this democracy that has been held up by us. For so long, Black women have been saving this country, saving this democracy, preserving our democratic privilege. As we know, we have saved elections in democratic politics over time. And so I think that we need to have that conversation. Also looking at what this president has done and looking at the fact that the Democratic Party, we make a lot of good points, but we are missing the point. And the point sometimes is that you ought to have this level of foresight when we're bringing it up to you the first time. You should be building a better bench. You shouldn't, because if he's going to come into question, shouldn't some of the people who were his colleagues previously that are still in Congress and the Senate be having those kind of conversations too? Because, you know, I'm a good Christian woman and I believe, you know, you shouldn't be looking to the left or the right if your house ain't in order.
Oh, that's what Mr. Ruffin be saying.
I am watching people his age who have been serving as long as him talk to him about what he should be doing when I'm sure there's some young person ready to come up that they got their foot on their neck and their thumb on their neck telling them it's not their time. I respectfully, I know how it goes. I know the lengths that people will go to keep and preserve power.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out, you know, I mean, unless at the convention they come up with some fix for this, the Democratic Party is bleeding, and it makes me sad as a person who cares deeply about our democratic privilege, particularly in the state of New Jersey. I mean, you know, I think that we have to have a better conversation about why are we not building better benches, and how come we got to force you to bring our issues to the forefront? Why we got to fight you on that? You are the Democratic Party. You ought to be forward thinking all the time. You ought to be the place where that is constantly reinventing itself, because you represent the widest range of people. The Republicans know their base. They know what they care about, and they don't compromise on that. We ought to be able to do the same things. And now all of a sudden we're kicking our team member to the curb. I think it says more about you if you kick your teammate to the curb at the finish.
I see in you what they, and I always say, I'm sorry.
Listen, it says more about you than it does about the person you kick to the curb. Because these people support a bigot, a criminal, a racist. I hope he gets well and everything. You know, but let me tell you something. There have been times where I, as a Black woman, even making six figures or even understanding what it might be like to you know, want manufacturing jobs to come back, because I come from an industrial city. Even with me understanding all the economics, my humanity would never have a place over there with them. And so why is it that we are pushing people out who have made it their priority to invest more money in housing, have made it a priority to invest more money in small business programs, who have made it a priority to move DEI to the forefront, even though they're suing his administration left and right, has made it a priority to push forward, even when the Supreme Court was like, you know what, we've had enough. We're just going to make it so the agencies don't have any control over this stuff. We're going to overturn the Chevron Act. In what world do we push these people to the side when they are doing the work, especially at the wrong time? It's drama. And it's like not even a good idea as a family to put our house and our business out at the forefront why? Because you heard a couple rumblings. Where were you when these rumblings were coming up 5 years ago? You all were the same people who were saying that we are more impressed by his leadership than we ever have been before. And we are confident that this ought to be the presidential candidate. I'm sorry, respectfully, given where I come from, we live by certain street codes, and that is completely against the street code where I come from. And I don't appreciate it, and I do not like it. So to those people who have courage right now to say that we ought to stick this thing out, the primary voters voted for him. To those people who have courage in a time of propaganda and popular language and having their 15 minutes of fame, I certainly applaud them, because it takes a lot of leadership for you to stand up and say something against what everybody else is saying, especially when you have a person. We don't rely on no other voting base more than we do the Black woman in Democratic politics. I wish you would try to have another conversation about who's going to lead outside of her. And if it's not her, it should be another one. Or a woman in general.
Wow.
I told Shakima.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I told Shakima. Here's my perspective from not say from the Republican standpoint, but from the right standpoint, that what I believe is right. I voted for him in the last election, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because I thought it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. It was to me, that just was the right thing to do. I voted for Hillary because I said, you know what, Hillary, she has the understanding. She has.
I voted for Bernie Sanders, but go ahead.
Okay.
I
voted for Hillary.
Yeah, this is the primary election.
Okay, the primary. Okay.
Yeah, primary election. And so
I was down with Hillary.
And I wasn't impressed with Joe until he picked Kamala. That's just to me, because it was much more than just putting the first black woman. It was a person who had a track record of integrity, who had a track record of truthfulness, had a track record of actually getting the job done. It's a difference between, as I say, laying on your domain.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a difference between going to your domain expertise does not always translate to a great leader.
Correct.
Right? She was already a great leader because she had the abilities, skills, and competencies of what a leader should be, and was when she was inside the district attorney's office. I was following her prior to her being a senator when I was younger, and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty dope, though. She is good attorney and things like that." That's what made me vote for her. I don't vote for people just based off their domain expertise, because that doesn't mean anything, though. All right, that doesn't make you qualified, nor does it make you even smarter than anybody else, though, because anybody can do the job, though, really.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it was a track record of just exhibiting the behaviors and qualities and competencies of what leadership is and what it should be.
Oftentimes, that's not enough. Yeah,
exactly.
Oftentimes, people say no matter how qualified we are, no matter how good we are as Black people and other than Black women, sometimes you can be the best of the best and it still not be good enough. And that's what this kind of environment is showing us, that even in a time where somebody might be prepared to lead, this system is saying, not only do we want to throw out the current president, we want to throw out the person that came with him, because there's this idea that over our dead bodies will another Black person lead this country. Over our dead bodies will we see, a Black woman president. And I think, having had to be on the committee, I was on the New Jersey state leadership team for Biden because I was one of 4 elected officials to come out before our chairman and support him early on. And that was me, Senator Ronald Rice, Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, and Congressman Donald Payne. Of those 4 people, I am still here. And I remember when, again, I am happy to be mentioned in the same sentence as those people.
Wow. Yeah, that's legendary.
It
that
takes
is
courage.
Legendary. That's big money right there.
For real, I didn't know that.
It takes courage to be able to tell a chairman, well, I know you're making your decision, but this is what I'm gonna do over here. So
right.
When you come along with us, then you can come along with us. But right now, this is what I'm doing. And I was so happy to have that he decided that he would do that and join with us and make sure that Biden had become elected as he was about to become the state chair, because that ultimately was like catapulting us into the conversation of what does it mean to have democratic privilege in a bipartisan fight. And I helped organize for us to call into swing states. The governor was on the call, and it was during COVID.
Wow.
Everybody's doing the stuff. And, we had Vincent Evans, who's now the Congressional Black Caucus executive director, who was political director at the time for their campaign. And he was on, and Simone Sanders was on. And we were galvanizing people because we understood at that time that states who were already Democratic had to go deeper blue and then pull some of the people out of the blue shadows in southern and midwestern states. And I enjoyed that work. And a part of that work was sending out a petition to lobby Joe around elected women to have a Black woman vice president. And I had to recognize that in New Jersey and have the conversation of listen here, if you sign this petition, it means that you're doing what's right, because we're continuously saving this country, and yet we're confused about who should take the stand as the vice president. Black women are constantly the backbones of plenty of things, even in our jobs.
I just want to say, Madam President.
Huh?
That's all. That's all I want to say. I said all I want to say is Madam President one day.
It's just Madam President, and I want that person to look like me, because I want our hard labor, whether it's from the slave, taking care of the kids in slavery times and birthing this nation, all the way down to being the president. Like it's our time, and I will condemn anyone who says it is not. Whether that's her or anybody else.
we have like, I want to get to this question first, Will, while you're on this topic. Will says we need a congressperson who is going to fight for all the people in the district and hold community meetings in each of the cities they represent us. Will you do that?
Yes, Mr. William, have you been listening to our thing? I said one of my favorite initiatives that I'll implement is the idea of town hall.
Yeah,
Right?
you said biannual?
Yeah,
biannual, yep.
biannual town halls, and then also going to community meetings. So each city
Wow.
their community meetings, and I do plan because there's nothing in this
nice
not done. So I've made the databases already. I know what the spreadsheet's supposed to look like, so you can't fool me on that. I'm not a prima donna elected official. I know how the proposal is supposed to look. I know how the document is supposed to be written because I've had it right. I know how you're supposed to open the mail and place it. I know every single part of this type of office. I've worked in every aspect of that. I know how you're supposed to file the information away. So I will not be a congresswoman who is being served,
absent,
briefed, and all that. No, like
a ghost.
my employees will be held accountable for giving me a database of all the churches in the district if it doesn't already exist. They will be responsible for scheduling my time in the district wisely. And I don't want to be I don't want to be spending my time at the gallows all the time. I need to be figuring out how we address these issues. Because the other thing is, I do not plan to die in this seat. I am not
Thank you for that.
I'm 80. So be very clear, I have a time, and I understand the urgency of now, not later on, but like now. Because if you can't get it out of me while I'm in my good years, you ought to be voting for somebody else.
I agree. I mean, I wouldn't even want to be there. That's when I want to be you said the gallows? That's where I want to be at the gallows when I'm like 75, 80 on the beach. On the beach. Give me a mojito. As a matter of fact, give me 3 because I'm gonna drink those 2 after I finish the first one back to back.
I've been at the White House when Obama was there, and he welcomed Justin Trudeau, the president of Canada. I've been at all the galas and the brunches and been there, done that. I didn't come here for that. I came here to do the job.
Yeah, I like that.
Giving up everything that I left my job to do this. I put everything in it. I know what it's like to be a political director, so my political director won't be able to just bring me anything and it just fly. Like it's not who I am, and it's not who I think government officials should be. Because I think you ought to be giving people your best. If you cannot, there's a big private sector where you can work.
That's true, and I don't think they'll be able to hack it in the private sector because they roll heads. Heads roll all the time, even if it wasn't your fault. And you was on that team, everybody's going.
Yeah. So I do plan to hold the meetings. I said that. And in fact, I think that's something that I plan to do. I do think constituent service programs are the forgotten space in offices. And I definitely think it's something that people ought to invest a lot of time and money in.
Okay. Shay wants to know if you can share your platform for public health.
Ooh. Well, praise the Lord. So I am... I have my degree in healthcare management and administration. I studied urban environmental health as well as long-term care. I also worked on what is affectionately known as Obamacare, getting people enrolled and working on Medicaid expansion throughout conservative states who had not expanded Medicaid. My assignment was Virginia, along with my team, where I was managed by Black women, and I loved it. And so from that experience, I learned that there's a couple things that are important in public health. One of them is access to insurance, not just access to the insurance itself, but access to quality insurance. If you look at the way in which we address Black maternal health, the highest, among the highest of infant mortality rates happen in our district.
Oh, you went out. Oh. What happened? Hold on. We got to get Miss Claybrooks back. Hold up, people. Just bear with me. Ooh. Hold on. Gotta get you back. All right. Let me see. Let me see. Hold on. We're having technical difficulties. Chris, we're definitely going to get to your question, and let's see. All right. Okay. There we go. We got you back.
Are we backstage? Okay.
No, we're back on live. You were telling us it cut off when you were saying that you worked on what everyone knows as Obamacare.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was saying about how I've had to work to expand, do some Medicaid expansion work, and getting folks in our special enrollment, populations, like folks who are just recently getting out of prison, or people who were victims of domestic violence, or people in the foster care system. And so what I've learned in my healthcare side of things, particularly as one of the only interns, or the first intern to work on the accreditation of health departments in the state of Florida, when they all were being audited and being responsible for having the same standards regardless of where the health department was. I think that quality of service is important. Even if you look at the issue of Black maternal health here in the state of New Jersey, and shout out to the folks who have, continuously worked on Nurture New Jersey, our former First Lady, who I spoke briefly about, with, where I disagree. But one of the things that I think she has done well is her involvement in Nurture New Jersey, around addressing some of the issues around Black maternal health and infant mortality. And even if you think about it from that aspect, most of the highest levels or highest rates of infant mortality happen in our district between Hudson County and Essex County. And between 2013 and 2018, over half of the births in both of those places were Medicaid. They were paid for by Medicaid.
Wow.
And so if you're seeing that Medicaid, people have access to healthcare or insurance, but the quality of that healthcare or insurance is not up to par, then we have to start to begin to address quality in our public health system, the quality of care. We also have to begin to address the idea of racism and discrimination in our healthcare system, like this idea that people believe that Black people are somehow biologically different, and it's not true. Most of the things, most of the times, people are dealing with us based on our preconceived notions of us, because healthcare is provided by healthcare professionals. What are healthcare professionals? They're people.
Right.
That's of thoughts and feelings, and
you
know where you come from. And so we have to begin to address that, and address, trauma-informed care. We have to begin to address preventative care. We have to begin to address this idea of publicly funded care. We have to address the idea of things like the Momnibus Act, which currently is in committee right now and in Congress. It's a series of 13 bills, and it has a lot of bipartisan support. It is led by, some of our most prominent leaders, and we still are figuring out, how it's going to roll out, right? It will address, grants and funding for, delivery care and doula services, and child care, and, education around mental health and motherhood. It's something that we have to begin to address. And it's more than just education, because we know that the federal funding is there, right? Most of the time when you're going to these festivals locally that are talking about, we're raising awareness about opioid,
Right.
Is the concert the best way to use that money? You know what I mean? It's holding people accountable for using the money, and not just a quick way to use it, but how do we begin to use that money, and do the hard work of analyzing our services, and analyzing how we provide those services, and analyzing, doing real audits on how we're using our money. Because I can guarantee you that it's not being used well. And we can read proposals all day. I'm a highly educated woman, spend a lot of time, reading. I am, the nerdiest of all nerds, and I can read proposals until I'm blue in the face. But when you have power to allocate money or move programs a certain way, you ought to be using that information to inform how you make decisions in Congress. And I'll do that in the public health arena, because we know that the money's there. how our people are
Yeah.
using it. Another conversation.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I don't think
And-
there's a secretary that you ask of any department that won't tell you, here's what we're doing. Here's how much money you're getting. But yet and still cities are coming up short in reporting on time.
Right.
And providing the services the way they should, or using it for salaries when it should be used for service delivery. Or,
Right. I agree with that. I know.
What are we doing?
Right. I know where I work now. It's interesting that you said that you worked on expanding the Medicaid age limit. And I was wondering where that came from, because that's what I do. I process Medicaid applications, food stamp applications, cash assistance applications, and then I just share other resources that we don't provide, or services we don't provide at our office with people. But it's cool to know or meet the person that actually worked on that legislation to expand Medicaid coverage in that way. Like, we just got the they call it DFDIs, and that's basically our instructions that we get from the state when there's a change or whatever, and how to proceed with executing the change or the improvement. And that was nice to see, because people were confused about, well, I have no income. Where I'm like 19 years old, I have no coverage. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know. But since you did that work, now they're covered until they get employed or they figure it out.
Yeah, and they should. And I think that's, again, it's the government's job. I'll go back to it. It is the government's job to make people's lives better.
So that was a good move. But the funny thing though, our health coverage is terrible as employees, and I'm helping people get Medicaid, but like, I have a high deductible where I have to pay $4,000 out of pocket first. But that's an issue with my union, who negotiated that against the will of
the union boss system is a real thing in New Jersey, and I don't like it.
It's terrible. It's so terrible.
Party bosses, but it's another thing. Don't nobody want to talk about the union bosses.
Yeah, it's bosses. It got so bad I withdrew, because I was like, you're taking my money, but you're not providing any services. And I know how a union is supposed to work for the people. So why am I going to continue to pay dues and I have to advocate for myself?
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I end up doing anyway. And it's sad, because I get my needs met, because I'm that kind of person that's going to go do the research and that's going to, push accountability. But some people, they're afraid. Like, they think if they push, there's going to be retaliation. And I'm like, well, I'm the type of person, I'd rather die fighting than suffer in silence. Because I'm living miserably if I'm not fighting. So I might as well go all out and take that chance to get somewhere. And you know what? I would say like 90% of the times I actually have a breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And I get my needs met, but it's unfortunate that other people don't, and it's sad. But the union bosses are a problem, and maybe we could come on somewhere down the line where you could come back on. And
come back on. I'll definitely come back on.
You have to, because Che is asking for you too. He's asking. He said, "Wow, I didn't know it was that much of incline. Shakima, that health care is so massive. Bring her back on." He wants to talk about the whole healthcare piece, and it is big. It's big. It is. I gotta pose this question too from Chris real quick. I have two actually. This one is, Chris says, what do you feel is the biggest problem with the Democratic Party nationally? And what are your thoughts on the attempted assassination of Trump yesterday?
Yeah, I can see people are coming on at different points of the conversation because I know we spoke about, our issues and things that we need to do to get our house together as Democrats. I think there are a couple issues, and I think it's happening just in leadership in general on both sides, but I can only speak for Democrats because that's what I am.
Right.
I think that one of the biggest issues is that we are not building a bench for future leaders to come in and do the work that is relevant to who we are today. I think that nationally, the thing is that, sometimes somebody said, Republicans are oftentimes factually incorrect, but they are emotionally correct. Democrats are factually correct, but emotionally incorrect.
Wow.
That people feel like we are not fighting or we're doing too much work to appeal and appease and compromise and things.
I think that's the other way around, but that's my own opinion.
And there's this need to, well, I mean, respectfully, I assume I expect you to feel that way, but I definitely feel like there needs to be a conversation amongst Democrats about, it's one thing to fight and always be the party that is doing what we believe is the right thing, but how hard we're going to fight. I think we have some hard fighters, and I think people who are doing that work, I think it's our messaging. How do we message that? How do we continue to package that for people, everyday folks? Because I think increasingly, because we have so many moderate folks in the Democratic Party that you can't tell, depending on the issue or how they, how it benefits them personally or their tax bracket. Because to be honest with you, we have a lot of Democrats who don't live like us, never live like us, and who don't even know what it's like to be us, but they just believe, that they believe certain things. And so you have to find out who they are behind closed doors and find out who they are, how they're voting and what they're doing, and hold them accountable to, if you're on the left and they need to be further left and do more work, we have to hold them accountable. And I think Democrats just have to be honest in their messaging to people. What is it that you're accomplishing? Why is it that we should continue to trust you, especially when you have a very comfortable base that can be the most disenfranchised base? Why is it so hard for you to strictly say that we just care about these people? Like, why do you feel like you have to appeal to a broader audience if and you're supposed to be the party of freedom? You should strictly be talking about race. And issues of inequality. You should strictly be talking about, and not in those like heavy taglines, we're a place for all people, and rest in peace Trayvon Martin and the George Floyd. They all know the right things to say, but my question is always, how are we being accountable to messaging and showing what we're doing? And I think the Democratic Party is doing the work. We're doing the best we can. Quite frankly, we live in one of the states that is the best places and safest places for women to live in, with respect.
Yeah.
We are one of the most liberal places to live, so I'm certainly not complaining about the work that's being done. I think it's just helping people broadly understand how hard this work is and how showing up in the interim, right? Like, not showing up in the interim and saying, we're 6 months out from accomplishing this, or we're 7 months out from doing that, because those folks are playing to their bases, and it's all false and it's all manipulative and lies. But it's hard to fight. I think we ought to be fighting too. And I think that's something that I'm looking to go do, like be just as much of a fighter for us, and, a qualified fighter, not just somebody that's, I passed out some book bags here and there. I showed up at the ribbon cuttings and I did the thing. Like, we are beyond that now in Black politics and urban politics,
And Chase says, thank you for not banning residents.
That's not, I can't
Will said, I just had to throw that out there. That's the inside between me and the audience here, the community. They put that up there. I didn't, that's how he felt. And like I said, I don't
you have the right to say whatever you want.
I don't do censorship. I do not engage in censorship. at all.
I would never kick you out of a meeting. I don't think I'm doing you a favor by entertaining your questions. That's why we've been on here for an hour and a half, and I do not find it robbery at all.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm about to get you out of here because Will wrapped it up.
I'm fine. Again, this type of work is not robbery. It shouldn't be to somebody who
exactly
your support and your vote. One of the hardest parts about this job is begging people for money and begging people for like support, and that's because you know how hard people work.
Oh, okay, that's true.
You know how like
that's true.
Get up and figure it out every day. Why should they stop and think about you? And my thing to people is you voting for me is also you supporting what's best for you. Because I actually am not a person who, believes that this work is like a burden. It gets frustrating sometimes, but my frustrations have usually not been with the everyday folks. My frustration have been with the people who have been sitting with power for a long time.
Right.
And I'm finally grown enough to ask questions. And like, I've never had a white mayor. I've never had a white person represent me in the legislature or anything. I've always had representation that looks like me. So I need to start asking questions now. I was like, okay, so.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'm young enough to have had somebody that's Black be in leadership for 35, 25, 15 years. So you can't tell me about the man and the this and that. Is it an issue? Yes.
Okay.
But I'm not the person you can sell on this idea of like you the victim, particularly if you're a leader. Now, everyday people, 100%.
Okay.
Working people, 100%. You've been sitting making these six figures for this long? Absolutely not.
Right. See, and I like your platform and your candidacy because it's genuine. You said something that you said like doing the work is not robbery from you. So I'm taking it that you're getting a lot out of this, you're learning, you're growing, and at the same time you're helping other people do the same thing. And that's what this work is supposed to be about. And it kind of it was like I felt your comment was relatable to me too with my work. I love what I do. Sometimes I don't like the behavior of my coworkers. And that's it. That's the only thing I don't like. But talking to people, giving them the right information, helping them get their benefits and really explaining to them, which I think I have some work to do myself because I gotta backtrack and talk to people about what the federal poverty level is, what that means. And because growing up, I didn't know I was in poverty.
Me neither.
You know what I'm saying? And that was probably a good thing because I was living my life carefree.
Yep.
Then when I went to school and I'm reading and I'm studying social work, that's when I started to learn about that. And that's why I went into that job. I went into the job that I'm doing because I'm like, okay, I want to help people. And even this platform too, it's social journalism. Mm-hmm. Where, I'm like giving out information, having guests on, talk to people, educate people, give them the knowledge. So it's fun. And I'm sorry I'm taking up so much of your time, but
it's okay.
That's how it flows too on the show. Like the plan is an hour, but if people start engaging or we start connecting and clicking in the conversation and things need to be said, then I just let it go on.
Yeah. But yeah. I think I see, someone asked me what was my final message and why people should vote for me. And
yes.
I'm just here to get the job done. Thank you for talking about voting. Election day is on the 16th. Early voting ended today. Tomorrow there will be a break, and then the 16th is election day. And I've always sought to answer 3 questions in my career, which is why are people struggling? why do some people live better than others, and what are we going to do about it? Not what we're going to think about it, not what we're going to say about it, but what are we actually going to do about it? And I just believe that my career and my life has been somewhere between reform and strengthening what we already have. And I fashion myself as a leader who is centered enough to build on what we already have, because there are programs out there, there's money out there, there's all these different things that exist. It's just, how do we begin to strengthen them and think more creatively about them? And then there's a part of my career when I became a councilwoman and an elected leader later on, and a director, where I had to start to think about how to create things that weren't already there to address people's needs. And so somewhere between the ability to improve and create is where I find myself, the most happiest and most comfortable in my work. And I think that's what we need in Congress right now. I think there's a lot of drama. Even if we look at the caregivers bill, which I've been screaming from the mountaintops every time I go to a door, the AARP is begging Congress to pass bipartisan legislation to do some federal fixes to people who are taking care of loved ones.
That's wild.
We are all literally one family crisis away from having to experience issues of healthcare access, housing access, supplemental pay by way of unemployment. Like, people go from employed to not employed because our culture, particularly a lot of the cultures in our district, are people who believe you should be taking care of your elderly loved ones, or when a parent is absent, the grandparent steps in, or when there's a disabled sibling or aunt or uncle or cousin, the family steps in. And so because they aren't having to use their SSI on that, or because they're not having to stretch their Medicare resources as far as they would if we didn't have that kind of culture of caregivers, then we ought to be accounting for that, because we're saving the economy $600 billion. Here in New Jersey, in our district, we're contributing to $17 billion of that, according to the AARP. And we have over 1 million caregivers here. 1 in every 3 voters is a caregiver. And on average, they are 50 years old. So if you're having to quit your job at 50, you still got some years left to go in the pension system. And you take yourself out willingly so that, because the Medicare services aren't stretching far enough for your loved one, you shouldn't have to choose between that, especially if you're saving this economy that kind of money. But the federal government has not come up with a fix yet. I mean, respectfully, we have a Republican-led Congress, but we've seen it pop up in pilot programs around New York and other states, but federally we have not fixed it. And New Jersey needs to figure it out, because every other voter, I'm talking to voters all over the place, from the suburbs down to the trenches, and people are taking care of their loved ones everywhere, and we need services.
We get those calls too, like when they're calling in to try to get more money to provide food for their loved ones, but they're, according to the Social Security, they've said that they're going to provide housing and food for them. So our SNAP program doesn't allow us to make them eligible, because this person already said they're taking this on, but they really can't afford it. And it's like I explain to people, it's nothing I can do about that. It's not, this is the way the regulations are written. But if you get involved, start talking to your Congress people, your assembly people, and let them know that this is what you're going through. Like, I can say it and it'll go over their head, but if there's a group
at the job, you've been difficult at work, just do the job.
Exactly. Right. And so that, that's the stuff that I tell people, like, get involved. That's what they're there for, to adjust for our quality of life. Now, if you don't go to them and you allow them to act like celebrities and rock stars and like they're doing you a favor, that's what they're gonna do. It's like,
I really appreciate that sentiment. I always say, listen, they always like to gaslight people and say, you don't come to community meetings. They did their part when they voted for you.
Right. Right.
When you vote for me on July 16th, you have done your part. It is then my job to represent you when I'm in public and when I'm not in public. That is what my job is. So if I have to speak to an empty room, that's what you voted for me to do. That's what my job becomes. So I can't stand when I hear leaders be like, well, don't nobody come to the community meeting.
They want to be seen. That makes me feel like you want to be seen. I don't want to see you. Go do some
These people
work.
working every day. They voted for you. They took time out their day
Right.
time to vote for you. I don't care if they ask you questions or not. If your platform is to do this, work on doing this. You have a job. Like,
Exactly. And then for some reason now I like to send emails because my time I'm doing something different or I have another engagement. I'm communicating to you through email. Now some of them don't answer the email. They're like, "Oh, you got to come in person." Then when I come in person, it's like they can't believe it. And I'm like, "Well, you didn't respond to the email."
yeah.
Now I'm in your face. Now, you feel uncomfortable. Why do you want to work with people then?
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I'm here to help. I hope that people show up on Tuesday. We know that this
Yes.
is a low turnout election. How can people reach out to me with the help of the campaign? You can reach out to campaign@claybrooksforcongress.com, and there will be somebody who answers you. We have just 2 days left. If you want to walk, if you want to knock doors with us, because we are actually going to people's doors. We're not just sending out mailers or doing this virtual thing. We are going to people's doors. We are talking to folks. We are collecting vision cards. So if you need me to come by, if you want to do a meet and greet between tomorrow and Tuesday, if you want to go pull people out to go to the polls with you, if you want to make calls for us, if you want to just call 5 or 6 family members and tell them that there's somebody in the race that really will work for us, then please do that, because it's time for a change. And I respect and thank God for the legacy of Congressman Payne and the foundation that he set, and his father and those before him. But I think we ought to pivot, right now.
Yeah, we need fresh leadership.
I think it's time for us to make that pivot and make the shift, because I think I've gotten just a little bit comfortable. And even if, I am not successful, which we are not claiming in no means, then we still will be making a pivot and a shift, because the fact that we are in this race alone tells you just how tired people are, just how much change people want. And, you have 12 good people in this race. I think 11 or 12.
11, I think 11. It's 12 if you count the Republican.
He trying to give us the option too. I try not to, I don't keep up too much, but I will say that what I will say is that all of that comes from people are being hungry for change and hungry for a democracy that represents them. That's why there's somebody from every part of this district in the race.
And I wanna like ask this question: are you endorsed by the machine?
I am not.
So this is all grassroots, straight directly to the people in their communities, at their doors, walking in their neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I am not endorsed by the party. I will say that I'm the most established Democrat, but established meaning that I've done the most work across this nation. I've done the most, work in electoral politics, getting Democrats elected in not only swing states, but also southern states that were predominantly red, and, moving that forward. So I will call myself an established Democrat, meaning that I care about democratic electoral politics and us maintaining our privilege in certain places, because I think we're But does that mean that I love something? I love this thing so much that I'm willing to challenge the establishment.
Ooh.
When it is not being established means that you have to challenge the establishment. And my mom always said, I discipline you, I challenge you because I love you.
Right.
And if I don't love you, I have nothing to say. And so when I'm doing it because I'm that fearful of us losing that privilege here in the state of New Jersey, if we continue with this carrying on, and people trust us too much for that. People have trusted us too much for that. And there are people out there, especially everyday, organized, hardworking Democrats, who are afraid to lose their livelihoods because they want to practice their constitutional right.
Right.
That is a problem.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
And if
It is.
even if the person who's leading, carrying on like that looks like me, I'm sorry, buddy, I'm coming for you too. Because it is
Ah,
it is an issue. And it
I
is
like
an
that.
issue I'm sure you wish that you had never brought up with me, because I am the wrong one. And will always be the wrong one when it comes to my people.
Wow, I got you on that one. I don't want to mess with you. I want to work with you.
I mean, it's true. I mean, so whoever needed to receive that message,
I know. I work, so I get it done.
I am not.
You don't gotta worry about me. We might be
No,
friends
not
because
you. I'm not even
you
talking
said
about you. I'm talking about the folks in our leadership who look like us.
you said you become friends with people who work, so we're about to be
I am
friends.
friends with people who work, but if when our establishment is led by people who may look like us but are as oppressive as the people who don't, we got a problem.
Awesome. Awesome. I like that. I like that. Yes.
We got a problem, big dog, and I'm here. I'm coming for you, win or lose.
Oh, see, I like that. I like that.
We have an issue, and it's not my
Yeah.
Win
right.
or lose, we are tired.
Exactly. So I want to ask this. I said I had one question like 5 questions ago, but this is the absolutely last question. Mm-hmm. Can you give me a rundown of what you've done when you graduated from NYU, right?
Florida A&M first, and then NYU. Well, Tallahassee Community College first. Let's talk about the trade schools in the Tallahassee Community College and colleges. The community colleges: Tallahassee Community College,
okay,
Florida A&M University, New York University.
Okay,
I did a dual focus at FAMU.
Okay, so you have 2, 3, 4 degrees.
I have
3. Wait,
no. Well, I don't know what we account associates as, but I have.
Yeah, that's a degree. Okay.
I have officially 3 pieces of paper saying that I graduated from somewhere. And
okay, so all the way up to master's then, right?
All the way up to master's, yes. And I have some certifications. So I am a certified contract specialist in the state of Florida. I probably need to renew that.
Okay.
I got my government contracting certificate there. While I had my associates and was working towards my bachelor's, because I worked for the state of Florida in the Juvenile Justice Department.
Okay.
The accomplishments that I can pull from there is helping to represent the department, one of 3 state departments that put on the Preventing Crime in the Black Community Conference, which had about maybe 6,000 to 7,000 people present. I represented the Department of Juvenile Justice along with the Department of Children and Families, which is like DIFIS.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
it's called DCP&P in Newark, in New Jersey now.
Yeah, and also the Department of Corrections. We did that in Florida. Somewhere in between there, I served as a dream defender when Trayvon Martin was killed. I was in college at FAMU. If you look up the New York Times article where I testified to the New York Times about the school to prison pipeline and my journey having been expelled from the public school system,
Okay. I think I remember you from that.
Yeah,
you look familiar.
So I was protesting and helping organize sit in with the Dream Defenders, protesting Governor Rick Scott for gun law change. If you want to talk about freedom of speech and being given the opportunities to exercise your rights, I was working for the department under his leadership and still protesting him after work and sleeping overnight in the Capitol. So you're wondering if I have the courage and the gumption to fight things. There it is. And it's important. And so that same governor sent me a postcard when I went on to work on the House floor for Ms. Pelosi and the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation.
Nice.
And so, then you have to work across the lines and be civil where it's necessary. And, that was an honor because at the end of the day, you are a governor. And I may not agree with everything you do, but being acknowledged for that work was important to me. I moved on to after, I remember being in the Capitol on the first day, like me using the same bathrooms as the Congress people on the House floor because it was like an exclusive place to be. And I remember shedding a couple tears, like, do I deserve to be here? Me? Like, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
But
you do. You worked your way up.
yeah, and after that, I moved on. I didn't want to stay on the Hill. I felt like there was a greater impact to be made. And so I joined a national nonprofit called Young Invincibles. And that's where I did a lot of the contracted work with HHS, the White House, and, the whole Obamacare enrollment program. And I was assigned to Virginia. And oftentimes we would be deployed to Maryland or DC if there were there was enrollment work that had to be done there. So the crash,
Wow.
anywhere from the crash with the website all the way up to,
I remember the crash. Oh,
and doing outreach work all the way in
okay.
hundreds of former foster youth or kids who are aging out of the system and teaching them how to advocate for themselves for their health insurance, all the way down to working in rural spaces, showing rural white people that Obamacare wasn't bad for them if they made a certain income, and that it was
So
actually it was their Republican legislatures that were preventing them from getting their access to Medicaid, and that they
wow. So they were lying to these people?
shift their focus. I mean, there was a Republican talking point at the time. Obamacare is bad, and I was
But
saying,
still, people needed health care.
yes.
So they would let their people die than to utilize it because it was, wow.
Right. And we saw that in a lot of red states, and they had a Democratic governor, but we had to help do the advocacy work to overturn the legislature and organize people to let them know that it was their legislature that was keeping them from getting the Medicaid, not the governor. So there was
wow.
Then I moved on after that and decided that I would go to grad school for urban planning and development. For me, all the work that I had done, I found that our biggest disparities were in urban and rural environments. And I figured if you could change people's built and natural environment, you could change their lives. So that's what I did.
Okay.
And while settling in East Orange, I, became civically engaged. I became a district leader. I talked about in my meet and greet how, there's a lot of education that needs to go on around where people can have entry into
right.
the spaces and be civically engaged. You can run for that. It's an elected position. So I did that. I was the BSA president, the Black Student Association president at my grad school. I received the President's Award at New York University, which is the highest honor to receive as a faculty or a student. I, was in a very competitive fellowship program at NYU. I graduated, became an AKA, became a councilwoman all in the same month.
Wow.
And moved on to become a councilwoman, created ordinances that held landlords accountable for how they decontrol units that they aren't fixing up well.
So you did actual legislation?
I did. I did a couple things in East Orange. I, was the councilwoman who helped provide gap funding for the housing authority to build townhomes. They came up and they got denied for the funding because they didn't know how to present well. And instead of just denying them, I went over there and met with them and helped them improve their application because I felt like it was a collaborative thing. And
right.
So the time they came up before my committee, they wouldn't get eaten alive because we needed them. And then after that was one of the first things I did. And then COVID came right after I was literally I was sworn in January 1st, 2020. I was going home with a laptop and was on Zoom.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so after that, I was responsible for helping to create the regulations around the emergency business program and the emergency rental assistance program in East Orange, as well as in Plainfield as the economic development manager. I had to build those programs from scratch once, particularly in Plainfield. Shout out to Valerie Jackson, who has been a Black woman who's been in my corner and an advocate for me, and I value her for that.
Nice.
And then I moved on to do work in saving our food program because, there was an issue there. And then moved on to do ordinance around parking. I think we did a poll. I went to doors and we collected, again, something like our vision cards now.
Okay.
And parking was the biggest issue. And having had done a parking study for the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation while I was a grad student, studying infrastructure and all of that, I helped change the parking legislation because the permits were too high. They were $175. I think they were between $150 or $175 annually, regardless of what month you purchased them in, to park on the street. And people were complaining, saying that $175 is a phone bill. That's a light bill. So I prorated, helped to create legislation. It took me a couple tries to get it right. It kept getting shot down. And finally, I created the part of the ordinance that prorates it for people every month. So now, every month,
Oh,
$12.50 a month. If you add it all the months together, you lose $12.50 for every month you go without a permit. So, based on the month you purchase it in, that's how much is prorated. So, by the time you're purchasing in December, you move here in December, you need somewhere to park. You're paying $12.50, which could hold you over until January. And that's a
right.
difference between groceries or any other bill or any other. It can make a big difference in people's lives, everyday work in people's lives. And then, landlord tenant issues were a problem. City wasn't holding landlords accountable enough. We got
Wow.
people protesting us and being on the news for having subpar living conditions. So, as the chair of Housing Licensing and Inspection, I help pass the ordinance or help draft the ordinance that hold them accountable. You cannot
Nice.
control a unit if you have not fixed the violations, and if we do find that there's a violation, you can't even reapply for 6 months.
So you were really doing the work.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
Yeah, and sometimes in the state of New Jersey, unfortunately, and then cannabis came. I helped decide how we were going to legalize cannabis, and when there was a conflict of interest, if you look at all public too, that was a public fight. When there was a conflict of interest, I stood, 10 toes down with the residents in a packed room saying, this is not ethical, this is not okay, and this is not what our community wants. And so, we want to legalize marijuana, but we want to give our local people the opportunity to have access at it, and not when we serve private interests, but when we are doing the work. And so, I've had my fair share of moments in my career where I've had to stand up, but I also come from a mother who was the same way. Like,
okay,
right at the house, we was in the back of the council meeting doing our homework because
nice.
she had to complain about something, or I come from, watching my other mom, my birth mom, have to stand in lines for services, or people treat her some type of way because they knew she struggled with addiction, and they oftentimes were confused when I came stepping up in the room with my suit on, like, yes, this is my mother. I'm not embarrassed about that, and you will not treat her crazy because she has family members that care about her. And I also happen to know the rules based on my career, and this is what you're doing. And so it just comes from my lived experience. I think that we have to get back to electing people who understand us and hold them accountable for continuing to do the work to understand us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let me just, you have some plugs right here. Thank you, Brittany D. Claybrooks, for talking with the community tonight. Exclamation point. Please come back for another episode of Current Exposure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shakima, for providing the platform. You're welcome. Here's another one. Wow, outstanding to hear that a local council person created legislation while serving. Two exclamation points. Thank you for that information. Brittany D. Claybrooks. What's the D for?
Dolores. It's the actual.
Dolores.
Yeah, it's
my
mom's first name. Yeah, her first name is Dolores. My middle name.
Oh, that's nice. She named you right after. That's what's up.
Yeah.
So, let me see. Hold on. Any other questions? Comments? Nobody has nothing else to say. What about you, Brittany? Anything else? Can we
exercise the right to vote on the 16th, please, y'all? Like, I've given up everything for this. I have left my comfortable job. I've been in the streets. My hair is back in a bun not because I don't want it to be done, but because this heat has been blazing on us, and we are willing to come any and everywhere and do this work. But all of it will be in vain if you all don't show up to vote. And we're asking that you vote for us, because no matter what people may tell you, voting for us means that your interests are really truly served.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what I'm going to do, I thank you for coming on. I'm going to close the show out by playing. I'm going to go back to let me see. Hold on. Let me pull it back a bit. Okay.
What happened to a Republican friend? He left us?
Where is he? Zaire?
Yeah,
Zaire?
my bad. My phone was overheating. So it's
Okay.
Zaire, you left us. I was like, I was ready for you.
I was ready too.
So you were talking a lot of the points that I was pretty much. I liked a lot of your points though. So
Zaire, thank you. I appreciate it.
I
I know that
all
means
your
a lot
points,
coming
though.
from you because
Yeah, I'm voting for you. Yeah, I'm a Republican. I'm voting for you. I ain't voting for Trump though. I ain't that stupid. You know, I ain't that stupid.
You know, I got the whistle ready.
Yeah, the whistle
I was about to officiate. Like,
no, but I like the Brittany before I even.
Nope. No, I'm just joking. Go ahead.
I like Brittany before because the fact that, like I said, though, she actually has the competencies and qualities that I define what a leadership is.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about just, all right, she did this, she did that, because just because you did it doesn't mean you're good at it. All right, or doesn't mean you're qualified at it. She did it, but she did it well. That's what made me attracted to her. So it was just like, okay, she did her job. She did it very well. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
So,
right, slay.
that's what drew me to her. And then, you know, me hearing her name prior to, you know, the you know, when she was a councilwoman, things like that. That's what also made me like, all right, she got things done. She didn't sit and say I did a bunch of things. She said I did this, and that. And her name is on this, and that. Rather than just sitting there at ribbon cuttings and things like that. She actually, you know, did the work. It's a difference between showing up and doing the work.
Yeah.
Right? Because anybody can show up, but the real test becomes whether though is if they did the work or not, though. And that's exactly what she did. So I have no issues with Ms. Claybrooks. I'm more of a moderate Republican. And I lean a little bit towards my Democratic side though too. So I understand a lot of different things. And like I said, though, growing up and when you talked about, you know, having environments that best reflect, where a child should grow, right? Their future, and it should look nice, you know, and the aesthetics of the community should be, you know, taken care of, specifically in public housing. I didn't grow up in public housing, but having family members that grew up in public housing, that would have made, you know, the difference between going to college or taking a trade school rather than doing some other things. Right. And so I'm very appreciative when you acknowledge that. I was just like, wow, she just hit it on the money. You know, it's like I said, though, it's not based off of you just said something that sounds good. You actually have the action and, you know, the work behind you that even prove even more that the fact that like, yeah, I did that. And what? What's up? Like, and so that was just like, I was loving that energy because your energy, you actually get it done. It's a difference between, you know, standing on business and engaging in the business. You engaged in it. You didn't stand on it. So that's what really made me want to you. So thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. And I want people to vote for you July 16th. Tuesday.
Yes.
And I will definitely be casting my ballot for you. I appreciate you, Ms. Claybrooks.
Thank you. I appreciate you too, Zaire. And the last thing I'll say before I sign off is I hope that this is a place where I'm able to frequent a lot.
Yes.
I'm looking into doing the organizing work. If I win, I want this to be the place where I have to come back and give updates.
Yes.
If I do not win and I am not successful, then I look forward to coming back here and us working together to talk about the real issues and do the advocacy work in our local area, because that's important. I think they don't need, I don't plan on going away. The rest of this election will not determine whether I stay or go. So.
Okay. So there you have it, folks. Miss Brittany D. Claybrooks for New Jersey's 10th Congressional District, U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you for coming on. I thank the audience for you all coming in, posting your comments. And I know we're going to get our late viewers. Feel free to still comment. I'll be watching the comments. And I don't know, Ms. Claybrooks, if you want to come back to the link, you can actually still engage because we have people that will watch the show tomorrow or later on tonight.
Is this on like Facebook or Instagram too? Or
it's Facebook and YouTube.
Okay.
All now right. YouTube, the comments are off because we got to monitor the live comments over here. So it's kind of hard switching back and forth. So we just stream the recording on YouTube. So if you want to replay it and watch it yourself, you can do it. You can do that on either platform, but this is where this is still alive.
Okay.
Like,
I'll share it on Facebook too. I'll share it on Facebook and all the platforms.
okay. And it's still alive too. Like with the comments, if you comment 2 weeks from now, I'll get an alert and I can respond, or people can respond to each other.
That's fair.
So just to let you know, let's see. Somebody says, oh, Nadira Brown, make a change, take a chance, vote. Right. Absolutely. So
and
let's
remember, nobody can see who you vote for, so don't be scared.
Yes.
Nobody can see who you vote for. Don't let them tell you we can see who you vote for, we coming for you. They can't. It is an infringement on your right. So vote for who you feel like you should vote for. And that's specifically for people who are involved in this process, who are worried. I mean, I know we'll have the everyday voter who have no clue about what's going on the inside. But for every Democrats who are participants in the democratic process, by way of our committees, our party, and all of that, nobody can see who you vote for. You choose who you feel like you need to choose. It's that time in our democracy. And I want to thank you for your service. If you a district leader, award chair, whatever it is you're doing, if you are doing that properly and you are trying to figure out a way to break out from the dictatorship or the corruption and all of that, understand that we are a movement that you can come to, because we are trying to do the real work. And it saddens me that we are in one of the most organized democratic states, and that we have so many people that look like us that are so well positioned and so disempowered at the same time.
Right.
That's another conversation for another day. I just wanted to remind folks that you who you vote for. So when you show up on the 16th, vote your conscience, please.
All right. Thank you. I'll take it out.
See you later.
See you.
Thank you, Miss Claybrooks. See you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Peace.
All right.
Hold on. Let's share this. Okay. Let's get it going.
Dream was a promise that hard work leads to a good life, but that promise has been broken.
Rising housing costs.
Rent has increased by more than 30%.
Cost of living is forcing some older Americans back into the workforce.
Nationally, seniors are now the fastest growing age group experiencing homelessness.
Are unpaid caregivers, and many of them are raising young kids and taking care of a parent at the same time.
The cost of childcare in the U.S. continues to rise.
I intend to do something about it. My name is Brittany Claybrooks, and I'm running to be your Congresswoman for New Jersey's 10th District in the upcoming special election on July 16th. I dedicated my career to healthcare, urban planning and community development, and affordable housing. So help me. When I became a councilwoman in East Orange, I was determined to fight for the community that embraced me.
New Jersey today becoming the 6th state to close all non-essential businesses.
The pandemic exposed the deep cracks in our society. I helped implement emergency business relief and rental assistance programs to keep my neighbors whole. Then I faced a challenge of my own. Losing my birth mother and my adopted mother in the same year, I took a break for healing, surrounding myself with friends and family. But I returned to this work in the most recent Senate primary, inspired by the continued fight for a New Jersey controlled by the people, not party politics and personal interests. It's time to end the cycle of broken promises. As your Congresswoman, I will never turn my back on the hardworking families of this district. No one gets left behind.
All right, people. That's current exposure. I will see you later. Peace. We're out.